Hello and welcome to the Grumpy Stew podcast. My name is Dylan. I am your Grumpy Stew, and this is episode 4 of the Grumpy Stew podcast. The podcast for and about flight attendants. Okay, so today's episode, it's going to kind of focus on getting older and older people. Those of you who aren't flight attendants and you kind of search in the interwebs, the Google, about how to become a flight attendant and the process and requirements and so on and so forth, you might come across a lot of postings about, is it too old to be a flight attendant? Or I should say, is there like an age requirement? Is there a cap? I mean, is it ever too late to become a flight attendant? Well, the short answer is no. There are age requirements, I would say. Most airlines would require a flight attendant candidate to be at least 21 years old. In other words, you have to be able to legally serve alcohol in most states. Some states you got to be 19, but virtually most states you have to be 21 years old to serve alcohol. But is there ever a time that it's too old to be a flight attendant? Well, not really. Not really. I have coworkers in their 80s and they're doing just fine. They're doing just fine. Some of my favorite people to work with are my grandmother's age. My favorite flight attendant, Annie Kirk. She's known as Vegas Ann, and she's original Pan Am. She's like 83, maybe. I mean, she's at the age where she has to tell you exactly how old she is. Like little kids, I'm 5 3/4. She's like, oh, darling, I'm 82 3/8. Okay, Ann. She's very, very British. She's been in the United States 58 years. Sounds like she's fresh off the boat. And the great thing is, people when they get to a certain age, they don't give a fuck about anything. And they just say whatever. They lose their filter, and I think lost her filter a long time ago. She doesn't give a fuck. She will say whatever, and it's hilarious. You never know what she's going to say. Oh, darling, I have absolutely no respect for fat people. Jesus, Ann, there's one right there. Fuck. Calm down. That's a real quote. The first time I flew with Ann, of course, was a Vegas trip, because she's Vegas Ann. I got it on reserve. And it was supposed to be a 24-hour layover in Las Vegas. And we were really late. We were like 3 or 4 hours late. By the time we got to the hotel for the layover, it was probably about 3 a.m. Eastern time. The time that all of our body clocks are set to is Eastern time. It's Pacific time there in Nevada. And Ann, 82, anyone care for a nightcap? I'm like... Well, okay, Ann, I'll come down. She beat me downstairs. And I'm not talking about, like, we ran into each other in the lobby or something. She was already in front of a slot machine with wine in her hand. It takes more than a minute to get a glass of wine. I think her uniform is held together by Velcro. She just goes up to her room and, she does a quick change act and she runs downstairs. I go... Oh, man, she had me out to at the Circus until 5:30 in the morning once. 5:30 in the morning, and she still wanted to gamble. I go, Ann, I gotta go to bed. I'm tired. I'm like 40. I gotta go to bed. Oh, darling. So I go, Ann, how long you been burning the candle at both ends? She goes, oh, darling, decades, darling, decades. Ann's super cool. She's been everywhere. She's done everything. She's done the whole international thing forever. She doesn't do that shit anymore. She's tired of that. All she wants to do is San Juan and Vegas for the gambling. That's it. Occasionally she'll go to Portland. And that's what she likes to do. She does whatever the fuck she wants. And it's great. There are some advantages to getting old. I'm going to get to that. But to answer the is it too old or too late to become a flight attendant question, the answer is generally no. As long as you're healthy enough to work long hours and, push around big heavy carts, and do some lifting, I would say. I mean, you got to be able to at least lift your bag. If you can be away from home for days at a time, you're not too old. I had classmates in their 60s when I went through new hire training at my current airline. So it's not too late. Some people become flight attendants as a second career. Or, they sent all their kids off to school. They're done being a parent. And they want to do something for themselves. They want to have some fun, so they become a flight attendant. There's nothing wrong with that. Totally do it. Go for it. You can't realize these dreams and aspirations if you don't go for it. No one is going to come around and hand it to you. That is the reality of life. If you want something, you have to go get it. All right. So, back to another topic about getting old. Like I said, there are some advantages to being a little older, especially if you become a flight attendant kind of later in life. You have instant seniority. When you enter your class, your new hire class, I shouldn't say that because maybe not every airline is the same as mine. Your seniority is based on your age and your hire date. So let's say you get hired on September 1st, and that's the first day of your new hire training, September 1st. So now they have to determine your seniority. It's going to be based on your hire date, which is September 1st, 2018, and your age. So if you happen to be older than everybody in your class, well, guess what? You're senior to everybody in your class. So everybody that graduates in the year 2018, you're senior to all of them, assuming you're the oldest or among the oldest. You're senior. You have instant seniority. There's probably 900 people instantly junior to you. And, next year when they hire more flight attendants, guess what? You're senior to all of them too. It just gets better and better and better. But there's some other advantages to being older. For one, you're not responsible for anything anymore. And you get to take advantage of people. It's great. Imagine the fun you can have with that. When you get old, you can get out of social situations just by saying you're tired. Or you forgot. This is exactly what I tell my grandmother. I go, Grandma, when there's something you don't want to do, just say you're tired. People will buy it. She pulls that shit on me all the time. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, okay, Grandma. Grandma's going to bed. Grandma's tired. Yeah, she takes advantage. Oh, God. She never has to lift anything heavy ever again. All because she's a little old. And she goes, can you get this for me? She swears to God her purse weighs 1,000 pounds. It weighs like 2 ounces. I end up carrying her fucking purse for her everywhere we go because she thinks it's heavy. And she gets away with it. And I'm like, wait, hang on. I gave you this idea. What's going on here? And the other thing that's great about getting old is you can get out of shit just by saying you forgot. Just say you forgot. People will totally buy that just because you're a little older. For example, Grandma absolutely hates her in-laws from my aunt's marriage, especially the mother-in-law. She has this like psychotic fucking hatred that goes back decades with this mother-in-law, okay? Decades. They've known each other forever. They're from the same small-ass town in Oklahoma. And Grandma hates this woman. Hates her with a passion. If she could kill her and get away with it, she would. I go, Grandma, when she comes around, if you don't want to hang out with her, just say you forgot. Just say you forgot. Well, I forgot. Grandma, it was Helen's funeral. Well, I forgot. It's great. You get to take advantage of people. You're not responsible for anything. And you can get out of social situations just by saying you're tired. There are advantages to being a little older. I say embrace it. Embrace getting older. Take good care of yourself. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Alrighty, so let me go down my list here. You're not responsible for anything. You get out of shit just by saying you're tired. You're never too late to become a flight attendant. Second career, dream job. It's no longer 1965. That's the other part about that. Back in the 60s, there were very strict age requirements. Like a flight attendant had to be retired by 35. You were expected to find a husband and retire by 35 and hang up your wings. Well, we don't do that anymore in the United States. Maybe some of the Asian airlines do that still, but we don't do that here in the United States. That would be considered discrimination. All right. Now, in flight attendant news, or as Paul Harvey would say, news, the American Airlines flight attendants have been in the news recently. A couple of days ago, the flight attendants at American picketed in front of their headquarters in Dallas regarding some issues relating to their integration with the U.S. Airways flight attendants. This is all related to the merger and some of the details in their new union contract with their employer. A couple of standout issues that they had that I could read in the news article that I saw was they're concerned about their reliability process And there are still some extenuating issues relating to the 5,000 or so flight attendants that were made ill from their last uniform. So maybe a couple of American flight attendants listening to this podcast can kind of fill us in on what's going on over there and lend us your perspective, because, you know, the freaking media is not going to cover it correctly. We all know that. It's going to be very one-sided. But a couple of things we do need to kind of just cover real quick for all the non-flight attendant people listening to this. There are a couple of things that are very important to your career as a flight attendant. Your seniority is one of them. Seniority is everything. For the most part, it's everything. Your seniority dictates whether or not you're on reserve or how much of it you have. It dictates what kind of trips you can hold, your layovers, what kind of aircraft you can fly on, so on and so forth. Your training schedule, everything revolves around your seniority. The more you have, the better. The less you have, not so good, right? That's kind of how it works. Another thing that is important to your career is something called reliability. What is reliability? It is basically your ability to be on time and healthy. In other words, you can't be late. This is an industry that revolves around very strict time schedules and departing and arriving on time. You have to be at work on time. That's really the bottom line. You can't be running late. If you run late too many times, well, you know, it gets written down somewhere and it might harm you in the future. Same with being sick. You can only be sick so many times before your employer starts to notice, right? This is true no matter where you work or what you do for a living, whether you're a flight attendant or you're a nurse or whatever you do, you're a pencil pusher in an office. Your employer has an absence policy, right? And they say, okay, you can't call out more than 9 times, whatever it is. That's reliability. The quote I saw from a flight attendant said that this new reliability program, their absence program, is, quote, punitive. So I do not know the details of their new absence policy that their union has negotiated with their employer. So I once again, if someone from American is listening and knows the details and can fill us in, yeah, be my guest. I'm curious. I'm sure some of the other listeners are curious as well. Though I have to, I mean, just on a personal level, I got to ask you guys, why are you picketing? I would have imagined that the union would have had a satisfactory absence policy negotiated by now. So I don't understand the picketing. I mean, that's what the union is for, right? They take care of these things for you on your behalf, so you don't have to get as involved. When I mean, it's the AFA, right, or something like that. I mean, they've been representing flight attendants for a pretty long time. I think they would have a good idea of what a beneficial absence policy would look like. Why weren't they able to get that in place? I'm curious. Maybe someone from American or their union that's familiar with the details can fill us in on that too. Let's see. The other issue that the flight attendants were unhappy about, and rightly so, that they needed to voice their grievances through this picketing process was, sorry, I lost my train of thought. It relates to their uniform program and this new uniform they got a year or 2 or 3 years ago. This new uniform that they have, the initial release of their new uniform was treated with some sort of compound or agent or something. I don't like to use the word chemical because everything is a chemical. Water is a chemical. Oxygen is a chemical. This is a scientific fact, okay? I know you guys are using the term more loosely than that, chemical, to make it sound like it's something nefarious. Everything is a chemical. So that aside, the uniforms were treated in some fashion, I suppose, to be maybe stain resistant or, non-wrinkle, whatever. I mean, I don't know, whatever, right? They were treated with something. And apparently that the treatment on these uniforms made a lot of people very sick, some of them very seriously ill. because of the treatment process on these uniforms. Something about 5,000 flight attendants have been made sick from one degree or another due to the treatment of their uniforms. Some of these flight attendants were very seriously ill. Others, not as bad. We're talking, rashes, things of that nature. But something interesting that's been happening is that there's been a high incidence of shingles among their flight attendants. Shingles is a disease that's related to chickenpox. One difference is shingles cannot be cured. It can be treated. It can be suppressed through medication. It's a bit like herpes. It keeps coming back, but it's not herpes, obviously. It's shingles. It's painful. It leaves marks. It's not, it's not a pleasant illness to have, but it was caused by these uniforms. It's one of the extenuating circumstances that they're dealing with through their merger and their uniform process and this union that they have, so on and so forth. So it'd be kind of interesting to see what goes on over there at the American. They're going through a lot of changes over there in respect to their merger with U.S. Airways, and change is something that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. So I'm sure there's a lot of anxiety. I think that's probably a good word. A lot of anxiety regarding some of the changes, and not to mention all the other issues that they're having regarding fume events and illnesses caused by their uniforms, so on and so forth. That's probably a whole other episode on its own. In fact, if you have access to the Twitter, I highly encourage you to follow a flight attendant by the name of Heather Poole. That's Poole, and she's an American Airlines flight attendant, and she's somewhat well known because she's an author. Read her book. I bet you can find it on the Amazon. And anyway, check her out. She speaks very frequently about the fume events and the uniform issues and toxicity and things like that. So, not to end this on a negative note, let's kind of take a breath and think about Texans again. I had one trip this year to Texas so far, and it's been nothing but a treasure trove of material. I don't know what it is with the Texans, but you guys are making my job a lot easier. So I'm going to leave you with this. We're going to San Antonio. We're in our initial descent. Lady says, "Excuse me, are we landing soon? I have an Uber waiting for me." Well, we're almost there. Probably landing in 15, 20 minutes. 15, 20 minutes, but it's there already. Can't we get there faster? Lady, we've already started descending. We can't go any faster. We'll be there soon. But we were supposed to be there at 7:30. She gave me a dirty look. Okay. Guys, those of you who aren't professional travelers, let me give you a pro travel tip. Do not pre-arrange your Uber to pick you up at the airport. Why? Because you could be late, and it's completely out of your control. I highly recommend waiting until you actually, land and exit the aircraft. Then organize your Uber. I'm just saying. All right. Oh, I got to tell you, there was this guy, like in row 20 on that same flight, who had a fart so bad. This fart could kill cancer. It was horrendous. It was a kind of fart that could come in handy if you had something that needed welding. Can we do another fart joke? It was a kind of fart that, a couple days later, you kind of notice there are no more birds in the neighborhood. Okay, kids, I think I'm going to leave you on that note, thinking about fart jokes. Unfortunately, I have to finish doing my laundry. I start a trip tomorrow. I want to get a monkey and train it to pack my bags and do my laundry. I hate packing my bags. I'm so sick and tired of doing it. Anyway, I'm going to leave you there. I thank you again for listening to the Grumpy Stew podcast. My name is Dylan, and we'll catch you in the next episode.